Hello, and welcome to Shochu'sday, wherever you are in the world. I hope you are happy, healthy, and doing well. And we are, again, split in terms of time zones. I'm in New York, Stephen is in Fukuoka, and today we're going to talk about a bunch of important stuff related to Shochu and awamori. But I'm going to let Stephen take it from here because it's noisy out here on the street in New York. Stephen?
Sure. Thanks, Christopher. Good to see you. Looks like you're having a nice time in New York. I know you're outside of one of my favorite standing bars, probably one of the only standing bars in New York. So we'll talk about that a little later, maybe. But actually, I guess the top of the show is that we have a new episode of Japan Distilled out. We have our hot service styles episode where Christopher gets into the nitty gritty of oyawari service and some other ways of drinking shochu warm. And it's a good one. I enjoyed it. I hope you guys do too. Let us know what you think, and check out the different styles. See what shochu you think plays well, cold versus hot. We got the 2 episodes up now. For cold service was episode 20. Hot service is episode 21. Let us know what drinks work which way, and don't be shy with experimentation. That's part of the fun. And then we'll have another episode actually on whiskey service. Will be the next episode in a couple of weeks. So we're going through service styles. We do have some pretty exciting upcoming industry news that we'll be sharing, not on this live stream, but coming up on a future podcast episode, hopefully very, very soon. And good news for the shochu industry all around, and for consumers. So good stuff is happening. I guess shifting gears, the other thing we wanted to talk about, and we'll probably end up keeping this short unless Christopher does want to chime in and ask questions. It is quieter, Christopher, but you weren't that loud. It's really just when the trains pass or when you got heavy traffic that it's pretty bad. But the street noises aren't too bad.
I just muted myself now, so we'll see how it goes. But if it gets too noisy, then just let me know and I'll shut it off.
Sure. Yeah. Well, why don't you talk about where you're at? Because that's a wonderful spot. I love
yeah,
that.
So
place.
as do I. Standing bars, right? Standing bar culture is such an important part of, especially where you live, Stephen, in Fukuoka, and all across Japan. I know this is really foreign to a lot of folks who are probably listening right now, especially if you've never been to Japan or you live somewhere that is not blessed with the concept of standing bars. But basically, it's a bar that now has outdoor seating, but was always a standing place. And in New York, that's hard. Ikinari State came here and failed. They flopped.
Quickly. Yep.
They were run out of town. The concept is you stand up, you drink, you can even eat. And it's not, a lot of folks are just like, yeah, but why? And I get it.
Yeah.
But it's fun. And
it is.
So, there's this very strong culture of this in the States. Not in the States, that's completely false. In Japan and probably other parts of the world, but particularly in Japan, standing bars are fantastic. The reason why is if you've ever used a standing desk, you realize that you're just more energetic. You're more tuned in. You're more ready to go. And standing bars are all of that. If you're eating, you're drinking, it doesn't matter. You're kind of into it. You're talking. It's fun. And then you tend to bounce really quickly too, which means that the place is very lively. The turnover is quick. You can meet you can meet 600 people in 5 minutes. It's a very enjoyable. Now, obviously, it's not for everybody, but there's this one place in Manhattan called Bar B, and it's run in the Japanese fashion. It's run by Japanese people, and they go with a very Italian-heavy wine and food program, which is quite good. And so you can have a whole lot of fun in a short amount of time with really good food. So we're both fans, and I'm back here again tonight. I just needed some place that I thought was interesting for people, that I thought was a little bit out of the ordinary in terms of Japanese, and it is a Japanese establishment. Make no mistake. You can walk in there and speak Japanese, and everybody understands. but they don't serve anything Japanese really, other than
Yeah.
the influence on the food and the experience.
Yep.
The service is very Japanese, so I'm a big fan. I know you're a big fan. Barbie.
Yeah, no, I love that. Love that spot. It was impossible to find when it first was on, when it first opened. I had heard about it because it's from the owners of Basta Pasta, which is a essentially Japanese style Italian restaurant, not that far away from where you're standing. And they opened Barbie as their second outpost. But the problem is if you put that into Google Maps, you got barbecue. It just was not Googleable. And it finally started to come up as Barbie. And that's it's you know, it had a slow start. It wasn't that popular, but now it's like packed all the time. It's a great little spot. I've had some really nice evenings there, and you'll just run into friends because it's a place where people congregate, and it's a place you make friends too. Yep. Yeah, really good spot. That's cool that you're there. I'm a little bit jealous. All the standing bars in Fukuoka are closed right now because our state of emergency was extended until the 30th, the end of the month. And also, I'm still in quarantine. I'm on day 10 of 14, so no bars for me anyway, at least for the next few days.
Other than the room you're standing in, of course.
True. Yeah, this is my own standing bar, I guess. Standing bar L. Bar L.
I like it.
Yeah. But standing bars are fantastic. I've got a few in Fukuoka that I absolutely adore. I can't wait till things are back to normal and I can go out and visit them again because it's a great place to meet folks. It's a great place to bring friends. And then you're right, you can just bounce around, hit a few of them. They all have different menus. One place will specialize in onigiri, another place in yakitori, another place in Spanish tapas or Italian. Like they're fun little spots, and they're great places. People always want to talk. You'll just have strangers come up to you and start asking you questions, and always fascinating to have those kinds of interactions in Japan. And you can do that in New York too. Barbie's a great spot. So maybe for those of you who live in New York, head over when you have a chance, and those who don't, put it on your list of places to visit when you're in town. And it doesn't have to be an evening. It can be a 30-minute stop. You have a drink or two, a couple of bites, and you move on. So fun place for sure. I guess the main topic, maybe we can shift gears, is actually to talk about our Ministry of Foreign Affairs events. So
Right.
To set context, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has a program by which they promote Japanese culture globally through events by having experts do different kinds of events. If you're, for example, a calligraphy artist, you might travel to somewhere in Europe and host calligraphy classes. If you're a tea ceremony specialist, you might host tea ceremonies in different cities around the world. And what we ended up, they had approached me actually in 2018, I believe, is when they first talked to me about doing something with them around shochu and awamori. And I actually had a world tour planned for 2020. I was going to be in Italy and Brazil, and the third country might have been added. And of course, all of that got scrapped because of the pandemic. And so the alternative that ended up coming about was a trip to the States, in which I was able to travel around and speak at different, as a guest of different consulates and also the embassy in Washington, D.C. And when they realized that Christopher was also going to be in the U.S. at the same time, we ended up being able to coordinate and have Christopher join me at the embassy in D.C., which was the last event. The first event was actually in Los Angeles at the Japan House, LA, which is a pretty fantastic venue. I believe it's a private foundation that the venue itself overlooks one of the old iconic theaters in downtown Hollywood. I believe it's the Egyptian Theater, I think it's called. It's got like the old iconic signs, the Art Deco sort of architecture, all that sort of thing. Pretty cool view. But the Japan House itself is a nice venue, and we had essentially a seminar and walk around tasting with bartenders, chefs, and media who came to the event in LA. LA ended up being interesting because I think at that point in my trip, because I'd already spent a few weeks in New York, we had just done BCB. I'd spent a lot of time in Japanese restaurants. When I was in LA, I ended up not going to Japanese places. I ended up in an Italian restaurant with some of the embassy or the diplomatic staff that are based at the consulate there. And then I ended up going out to craft beer brewery with some friends after the event. But actually, no, I did go to, that's not exactly true. I did go to Shibumi. Chef David Schlosser, who has his, essentially I would call it almost a Kapo style restaurant. It's high-end Japanese izakaya type, but really high-end. Great bar program, fantastic cocktails, really extensive Japanese whiskey list, pretty solid shochu list, great sake list. And he does a lot of in-house fermentation. And he ended up preparing the food for the LA house, the Japan House LA walk around tasting. And like he made his own chocolate to pair with mugi hoka, actually the roasted barley shochu. He made, he had 18-month-old cured or pickled shiitake mushrooms that were just umami bombs. Fantastic. And then he even did like Miyazaki Wagyu, like seared Miyazaki beef. So really, really great tasting for the people who were able to attend that event in LA. And then it was basically after that, it was off to Chicago. The next day I flew to Chicago, ended up going to Bar Kumiko, fantastic bar concept restaurant in Chicago, really hard reservation to get, but was able to go with some folks and had a lovely, lovely meal. Got to meet Julia, who I'd never actually met in person before. The service is on point. The food was fantastic. And of course the cocktails are really, I think the word I would use to describe her cocktails is sublime. They're so delicate and elegant. And it's like, and nothing's out of place. Nothing's off kilter. And nothing's rushed with the cocktails. It's very Japanese style. It takes a long time to make your drink, but it's worth it because it's just so on point. Just really, really well made. So really excellent spot in Chicago. And of course I had to stop by Murasaki Sake Lounge, which is kind of a karaoke snack bar. It does have karaoke. It also has turntables that I've never seen used. And it's got a very snack feel. I've been in there and be sitting next to like the flight crew from JAL, you know, like the pilot and co-pilot will be in there having a couple of drinks after they've landed. And it's just, it's a fun little spot. And great guy named June runs the place. He's actually opened some new places. He's now opened a jazz venue out in the sort of the Japantown area of Chicago, which I'd love to go next time I'm in town. Oh, there goes Christopher's phone.
Sorry, I have my phone placed like on top of a police car, so I have to.
On top of a police car? That's bold.
Got blown over. It's pretty windy right now, so I've got my mic muted. And
I got.
There's, you can hear that freaking train.
Yeah, I got to say, placing your phone on top of a New York City police car is kind of the epitome of white privilege, isn't it? I'm not sure I would even think of doing that, but I guess a kid from Vermont doesn't know any better.
So what's your overall impression of in terms of the, whoa, hello.
Yeah.
You glitched. Maybe that's
Did I?
fault. Yep. So what's the
let me see which audio I'm using.
Sorry?
I'm just going to check which audio I'm using. Just a second.
Okay. So what's the overall impression of the... Oh, gone. Okay. Well, hey, welcome to the Pellegrini Hour. Apologies, everybody. We have clearly lost the plot as far as StreamYard is concerned, and it's probably mostly my fault just because I am on... Who am I using? AT&T right now, which is never going to be a good sign. So if I could give a summary of how all of the Japanese stuff went, the Japanese Consulate, the Japanese Embassy, I would say it was pretty good just because they did. So I'm going to let Stephen in from Purgatory real quick. Here we go. Add to stream. So,
sorry about that.
No worries. I figured it was a mistake. I was just saying.
Well, no, I changed my headphones, my audio to my headphones, and it kicked me out. Yeah.
That's annoying. Okay, so we know not to do that again. So what I was trying to do is just to to tell everybody that I think overall the Japanese government events were very good in terms of uniting people who have some tangential interest to Japanese spirits, Japanese culture, Japanese culinary, Japanese food. We had a lot of chefs, we had a lot of bartenders, we had, of course, the entire Japanese embassy, consular staff, and then also, I mean, at least in DC, I don't know if this happened in other places, but we did have other embassies show up to the Japanese embassy event. I think the Irish embassy showed up. Is that right?
Yeah. So actually, I didn't actually get to the consulate event yet in Chicago, but the Chicago event actually was held at the Consular General's residence up in Evanston, Illinois, and that was a walk around tasting. Again, with restaurant and bar folks, met some really great chefs, some really good bartenders. Brian Mita was there from Izakaya Mita, and then June, the owner of Murasaki Sake Lounge, showed up. So that ended up being a nice afternoon event. And then that evening we had Chicago media. Monica Eng, who recently left the Chicago Tribune, now writer for Axios, as well as some folks from WGN. So pretty good turnout there for the dinner, and that was with embassy staff and with media. And that was a tasting dinner with shochu and awamori, along with Japanese food, catered Japanese food. And then actually the next day I ended up on WGN radio, which was pretty cool because I used to watch the Cubs on WGN. So I got interviewed on local radio, which was a pretty cool experience. Yeah, and then I from there it was down to DC, and that's where Christopher met me. And he and I, working with the embassy staff, we had a series of events at the former ambassador's residence, which is a gorgeous old, essentially mansion that's now being used to host events. And we had a media dinner there as well. We had a number of people from the press who came and had dinner with Christopher and I. We could taste them through a wide variety of shochu and awamori. And that was with actually kind of almost a French menu, which was pretty cool. The meal was quite a bit different than traditional Japanese food, although again, it's inspired by Japanese cooking techniques. So that was a very nice dinner.
Definitely.
Yeah, and that was fun because they actually had us all set up about 6 feet apart, because they had used a huge, really long table. You can see it on my Instagram actually, and the table was wide enough where you were essentially 6 feet from anybody during the dinner. And Christopher was toward one end, so he could sort of hold court over there, and I was on the other end, and I could hold court at my end of the table. And then every so often the group would all coalesce around a single topic. But that was a really, really enjoyable dinner, and it ran long actually. I think I think people really enjoyed themselves. And then the next day we had again the trade tasting with bartenders and chefs, and we met some really, really, I think, key members of the DC restaurant community who came to that, which was fantastic. And then that evening, actually, as Christopher mentioned, we hosted a second tasting for neighboring embassy staff. So we had people from the Irish embassy, actually the American foreign service folks who specialize in Japan or in East Asia came. So met a bunch of American diplomats, and then Israeli, and I think there was some folks from the Dominican Republic. So it was really, really fun to kind of talk through the traditional Japanese drinks with people from other countries as well. And yeah, that sort of wrapped it up. And then we went out and had barbecue with my brother and my cousin, which is when we ended up.
That was good.
That was our live stream 2 weeks ago.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But no, I agree with you, Christopher. I think the embassy events really let the embassy and consulate events really did give us a wide breadth of exposure for shochu and awamori to people both in the restaurant and bar industry, as well as to media in these different markets. And hopefully it's the first of many of these kinds of things that we can organize with the Japanese government, because there does seem to be an increased investment in promoting shochu and awamori overseas. In fact, a really interesting idea that I heard was one concept that we may actually try to explore later in the year, if not next year, is an awamori mezcal collaboration, where you have Mexican food and Okinawan food, and then see how they cross-pollinate, how they can actually compare with one another. And that could be a really, really enjoyable event. So that's think, under discussion at least. And I think that would be really cool to help foster relations between Mexico and Japan as well.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. So all in all, it was great. Really glad to see investment from really nice to see investment from the Japanese government. Is I'm sure many of you know, Christopher and I have done lots of events with JETRO, which is a Japanese external trade organization. We've also, of course, done lots of events with the Japanese Sake and Shochu Makers Association. But it's nice to see other government entities getting into the conversation.
It absolutely is, and I fortunately was able to sit with some of the consular staff from New York City last night, and they're into it. I mean, especially there was interest in awamori, which is kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, awamori. So I think we're going to be able to cook a few more events up, which I think is great.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's our. I guess that's our update from the activities of the rest of my New York or U.S. trip. And like I said, I'm back in Fukuoka quarantining and waiting for the emergency to lift. But yeah, I guess, Christopher, how much longer in the States have you decided?
I think probably I'll be flying back next Wednesday. Yeah, that's almost as late as I can go. Thursday is the latest. I need to, of course, get another test, and then I need to. I'm going to DC tomorrow, so I'll be, and then I have no idea what's going to happen. It's been kind of interesting because this entire trip has been like, well, we'll see what pops up. Like, there's very little planning. It's been exciting. So I'm not always sure where I will be 3 or 4 days from today, and I that's still the case. So it's been kind of the case for a lot of the time, but it's good. It's good. We're just had a couple of good sales calls today, and blowing people's minds. It's not quite like Atlanta, where I was causing identity crises because people hadn't heard of these spirits before somehow. But in New York, it's different. But you can definitely still get to people, and they're just like, "Oh, I thought I understood what shochu was, but clearly I do not." So yeah, it's been good. Nice. It's been good. I'm not tired.
Yeah,
I'm hungry. I'm still hungry, but
I can imagine.
Only a few more days, only 1 more week. So
yeah. Well, it sounds like it's been a good trip for you, and maybe when you're back, we'll get a recap of all your sales activities and that sort of thing.
Some of the highs and lows. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
we can do that. Cool.
Kind of hear what people are, how people are responding and that kind of thing.
It's been better than expected. I think that's a quick taste.
That's great news. If we can very quickly before we wrap up do newly opened, maybe, because I actually have had lots of time to open bottles in the last week. So if you can put up the flag for that. I really was surprised by this one. I could call this one both newly opened and bottle kill, because I've actually finished it in the last week. This is araki, which is a mochi mugi shochu. So they actually made mochi out of barley, and they made shochu out of the mochi. So it gave it quite a sweetness. It has a lot of that barley character, the graininess that you expect from a barley shochu, but with a pronounced sweetness relative to standard barley shochus. This is actually from Hyogo, so not from Kyushu. Hyogo is where Kobe is. It's borders Osaka, so it's made up in, I guess it's still called West Japan, but it's more central Kansai region. But was really impressed by it. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Araki, the mochi mugi shochu. It's a style I hadn't had before, so I thought it was pretty cool to try something new like that. The other one that I actually opened recently is actually this guy. which is it's called Tsukio no Fukuro. It's this Genshu, 43% alcohol corn shochu. Now, what's really interesting about this is it's 100% corn. So they grew koji on corn, which is pretty cool to see. And it has a lot of corn character. It's also barrel aged. I think they put it into this amber colored bottle, so you can't see just how dark it is, but it's not bad. It's from Takachiho Shuzo.
Takahashi, yeah, they do a lot with corn. That makes sense. In Miyazaki,
Yeah, so it's Tomorokoshi and Tomorokoshi koji. So corn and corn koji are the ingredients. So it's not bad. I mean, I don't know that I need to drink a lot of corn shochu, but it's interesting again to try something different, right? These are just not things you find very often. So fun to experiment with a lid. I'm actually curious what it would taste like if it hadn't spent time in oak, because obviously oak gives it a lot of, the barrel character. You can still taste the corn because it's single distilled, more pronounced than you would in a bourbon or something like that. But it's interesting drink. Have you had much corn shochu?
No, only the one, the babon. There was that. Yeah, do you remember that?
Right.
From last
year? I do. Yep.
So that's my only reference point.
Yep. Maybe I'll save a little bit of this for you.
Great.
Cool.
Okay, cool.
Well, yeah, I'll let you get some food in your belly. Enjoy the standing bar.
Cheers.
Fine folks at Bar B.
Yeah. I hope my wine glass is still there. I feel like it's probably been nicked, but
yeah,
I'll restart. And
there
tomorrow on to Washington D.C.
Enjoy. Stay safe. You want me to do the sign off?
Can you lead us out tonight?
I can try. I know I'm not going to do it as well as you, but anyway, thank you all for listening, wherever you are in the world. We wish you a hearty and heartfelt kanpai.